Or we all went to a dinner.
There was, at one point, our health insurance here was based on the number of health issues, and some years they were higher than other years, outside of this particular agenda item, so that you can get some answers to the bigger questions.
And what he's talking about, this stop loss under the health insurance and OPEB program, I have a feeling is not covered by our policy with the trust. That's more liability.
Well, I would still be interested in seeing exactly where the two things overlap and seeing if we could maybe take a look at that money that we have sitting there.
All right, Brian, next meeting,
Thank you.
let's have you be prepared to talk about an analysis of the monies coming in and going out of the healthcare management fund. We should do it as on the manager's report. We'll have you come up, preferably have some materials in advance of the meeting, and we could discuss it then. Excellent.
Will do.
So, back out of the rabbit hole, I apologize.
No problem.
Motion to approve 9A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank
that
you.
passes. Thank you, Brian. Rich Bourbonnais, come on up.
Good evening. I have 4 items. The first one, item B, wastewater user fee adjustment. This is to sort of finalize the process of our wastewater fees. We talked about it at during budget. We're requesting that we go from $350 per service connection per year to $400 per year. We're also asking under this item to go from $4.40 per 100 cubic feet over 10,000 cubic feet to $4.80 per 100 cubic feet when you're over 10,000 cubic feet. So it's an excess fee.
Any questions for Rich on this one?
The last increase, to add, I'm sorry, the last increase was in 2023. So it's been 2 years.
What's the average usage of a home?
The average use for a home is about 30 to 35 cubic feet a day. So that's about 350 gallons a day. That would be sort of like a 3-bedroom house. So you're doing about 3. Now I caveat that with when the grass is growing in some areas, you might see 2 and 3 times that because of watering. So our sewer fees, we do not have sewer meters on homes. The sewer fee is based on the water fee. That's why we work off a flat fee. Whereas water, well, actually our water works off a flat fee as well, up to a certain amount, and then we have different tiers. In some communities, water fees actually work on how much you use. And you can even pay more in some places. I think Veolia might work that way a little bit, but that's why sewer fees work off a flat fee, and based on sewer water use.
Are you falling short, and is that why you're raising the rates?
Thank you. The reason why I'm suggesting we raise the rates, as you know, we've gone up quite a bit on our chemical costs. Our disposal costs are going through the roof, and we're having issues even getting rid of some of our solids. And now we have a number of increased permitting requirements for testing and those types of things. So these things keep going up, and as you know, the enterprise fund is self-contained. It's it's fully funded by the users. And when those rates go up, then we have to increase fees. We don't have a choice. And we're still our service is still one of the lowest in the whole state, even with this increase. And I think I provided a list of some of the user fees around the state. That doesn't even account for what's happened over the last year on some of those. I know that Narragansett went up because I pay more. So we're actually still one of the lowest in the region, in the state.
So this, I don't have sewer, so I don't really understand like the billing pieces. So, but to reduce the cost to the person, the household, the person has to just use less water?
No, not necessarily, not necessarily. If the home is experiencing a lot of excess fees, then yes. But you're going to pay a base rate, and I'm hoping to make it $400 a year. That's the base rate. Every home will pay that. When you exceed 10,000 cubic feet in a year, then you'll pay the excess fee at $4.80 per 100 cubic feet over the excess value of 10,000.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Rich? Do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 9B.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Thank
What else
you.
we got, Rich?
Item C is the septic tip fee rate increase. That's the fee that the septic haulers pay when they dump at our facility, when they dispose of their waste at our facility. We'd like to go from $90 to $95 per 1,000 gallons, all for the same reasons. We are actually one of the higher prices in the area, but we have a somewhat limited capacity, and I believe that's really the reason why we are where we are. I'm staying consistent with other increases in the past on that. I'm trying to maintain, I think the last time we did this, we might have gone up $8. I went up $5 rather than going to 98,
All right, any questions on this one?
Motion to approve item 9C.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes.
Thank you. Verizon has requested that we provide a site access agreement, or we sign off on a site access agreement. This goes hand in hand with some of the work going on with the railing that's going to be installed up there. If you remember, maybe the last meeting I was here with an agreement with Verizon to extend their agreement out, based on the installation of the railing. This allows them the ability to go in and do some sampling. They want to test the paint. They want to do some different things in preparation for that construction. So that's all this is. We'll end up having to do one of these on Mawtucket as well at some point.
Rich, what is this, like an access easement for a duration of years?
No, it's for this project. It's not, I don't know, I really can't tell you if there's some sort of sunset on it or something to that effect. I'm not sure how long it will go.
All right.
I really didn't even think. I related it strictly to the work that's being performed now. And,
So once it's completed, the agreement
once it's
expires?
completed, yes, then this is done.
All right, any questions for Rich on this one?
So just trying to understand, because I live right there, and so they just want to have access to the water tower so that they can plan for their technology access platform thing that we talk about, all the T-Mobiles and all of them?
I think, so what it was explained to me by Verizon, I asked why, I asked when we were going to get one on Mawtucket as well. He said, well, we may or may not do one on Mawtucket, but we may. And what they said was, it has a lot to do with lead. If they find lead, then their pricing changes a lot. So they're looking for access to the facility to do some testing so they can price this project properly. Regardless of whether there's lead or not, they're still going to do the work. It's just that it involves a lot more for them and a lot more cost. And then if they find some material that's maybe is going to make their costing difficult, I think that this agreement looks more to indemnify them from having to now change out the entire tower.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Rich on this? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 9E.
D.
D, sorry, D.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
So the final item is is some engineering services with Jim Jeremia. As you know, we've used Jim Jeremia at our wastewater plant an awful lot over the years, and this is a request to extend his contract to include a few more items. The items are to replace the disinfection system at the treatment plant, and I believe that some of you might have even seen that system there, but it requires some engineering, and we need specifications and all those things. We got to put it out to bid. Going along with that, we'd like to revise some of the piping that's happening over at the piping that exists over at the Silver Lake Pump Station. Some of the hangers are not doing well. We want to replace a lot of it, and anything that's maybe not used anymore, we want to get rid of it. But we need we need his eyes on it to understand what's going on. We're also going to try to couple that with the hypo, the chemical. The disinfection that we want to do at the system that we want to do at the plant, we want to couple those together, those projects. We'll get better pricing that way. The third project would be to replace the Shadow Farm pump station. The pump station there is failing on a regular basis. The generator's not doing well. We want to upgrade that whole system, make it a little bit easier for us to use, maybe even get rid of the generator altogether.
All right. Any questions for Rich on this one? Go ahead.
Just one, Rich. In addition to the Shadow Farm, didn't we have a discussion about Silver Lake? Is there a problem with that pump too?
There is a problem with the, have I been in here on that last time? There might have been, no, I don't think I was. I think those are more maintenance
only learned it
issues.
from you.
The only issues we've had at Silver Lake recently, we did have a pump failure at Silver Lake, and we are replacing that now, but that's all part of our maintenance part of that. It does not always, it doesn't always show up in this. Sometimes it's got to be sort of an immediate thing. We got to go get another pump. But there's nothing presently, there is a heating system that we want to deal with over there though as well. That may be what we're thinking about.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If you get rid of a generator, how will things operate if you lose power?
Well, it's going to be gas. It's a certain type of system, and we actually, oh gosh, I can't remember if it's Allen Farm or where the other one is. We have another system like this, and it's gas. It's run off natural gas, and I'm not quite sure how it operates, but it doesn't require that we have a pump. It'll run anyways if a generator. It runs anyways if the electricity is cut off. It's effectively like a generator, but it's all gas powered. It's a little different. I think the pump runs off of gas. I think it is, but it's set up a little differently.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 9E.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Yeah, thank you. But one other thing, but when it comes to construction, then it will be back here to explain exactly what's being built. So we'll know more at that point about exactly what type of system's going in.
All right, thank you, Rich. All right, it's going to move us to item F, a resolution authorizing the tax assessor to abate taxes in the total amount of $24,944.23 as shown in tax abatement request number 638. I don't believe the tax assessor is here tonight. I'm going to go to you, Jim.
The tax assessor is out of state on vacation, a planned trip, but I still told her to put this on so we could resolve it. So most of the tax abatements in this town are elderly, late filers. Some are, like a widow of a veteran exemption, mostly exemptions that were missed. But there are two that Wendy wanted me to note. That one is a registered trailer, and the other one is also a registered trailer. So what does that mean? So by law, if the trailers, for example, they're at Mary Carpenter's, if they're registered, you cannot tax them as residential property. They have to be taxed as tangible property. So those two were taxed as residential property, and by law, we shouldn't be doing that. So they're being abated, and then they'll be taxed as tangible property. Just
Got it.
make note of that. That's it.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim? All right, do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 9F.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
That 25,000, is that strictly for the trailers?
That's the separate
No,
things here.
no. The one trailer was $774 being abated, and the other one was $1,030. The 20, you're talking about the total amount that's being abated? Is that what you're talking about? No, that's numerous abatements, but the two for the trailers, one's $1,030, the other one's $774.
The attachment has like a couple of, 2 pages of maybe 10, 12 people and things.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item G. Mark Russo, come on up.
We always forget that. Good evening. So this resolution is authorizing an award of bid to Cold Masters Temperature Control for heat pump installations at the Public Works Garage Highway Department in accordance with all the bid specifications in an amount not to exceed $70,330. That includes a contingency. Currently, they use in-the-wall air conditioning systems. There's 3 of them, one in the maintenance garage, one in the office, and one in the supervisor's office. And they use a hydronic boiler for heat in the winter. I think they built the building around this boiler. That's how old it is. So, with these heat pumps, they'll take the load off the boiler on the shoulder months. And provide air conditioning in the summertime. Is a 36,000 BTU unit going to do the maintenance office, the main office, and the supervisor's office, and another 36,000 will be a ducted unit that will take care of the break room, the hallways, and the restrooms. If you agree with this resolution, I ask we award this contract to Cold Masters.
Excellent. Any questions for Mark?
Is this building on Aesopon Road?
It is.
All right, do I hear a motion here?
Motion to approve item 9G.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is 6 tons of cooling?
It is. Yes.
What are you thinking, Greg?
Just seems high, but I know you went out to bid.
Yeah, we had a pre-bid conference. We had 3 vendors show up and only 1 submitted a bid. We had a contractor come in and do a manual J assessment on that area, and this is what they came up with as far as the square footage goes.
So you think it's too powerful, Greg? Is that from your expert?
Given the times, probably not.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion, questions for Mark, anything? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, it's going to bring us to item H. Chief Moynihan, come on up. H and I appear to be very related, so maybe we'll take those two together.
Yes, good evening. So we have several items, H and I, again, that's for our dive. So over the last year, we've expanded our dive unit, gotten training for members. We have 9 members that are now certified to dive. Since 2013, we've been working with UFD on a co-unit response to dive incidents. So, this summer alone, we can look at some of the water rescues that we've had or calls. So, this is really an important move forward. Dive team has never had their own equipment, so that poses difficulties there or challenges as far as our readiness. So we secured federal grant funding through the Burn Jag grant, received an award in the amount of $13,846. There is no match to this grant. We went out to bid on the equipment that's needed. We received 3 bids back. One, we eliminated right away based on the sales are final, so if a suit came in that was too small, we wouldn't be able to return it. We've split the bid between two vendors, and basically to get the best pricing between the two. So that's why you see H&I as two different requests for a resolution to really maximize. So we're really going with Scuba Trainers, which is out of Cumberland, and if awarded, we would look to purchase the gloves, boots, and flashlights through them. And then the wetsuits, the hoods, the masks, the fins, belts, weights in a bag would come from the other vendor who bid and had the lowest pricing, and they're out of San Diego.
All right. Any questions for the chief here?
Would you be getting dry suits also?
Right now, it's just the wetsuits that we have here for the funding.
I feel like this is totally new to me, and I've been on the council for 2 terms, so I'm surprised to hear that maybe we just haven't made a purchase in the last...
Yeah, we haven't made a purchase
Okay.
because the current equipment is really, the fire UFD has had it, and, they've had challenges themselves of really staffing a team, so we've done it together in this way. Like I said, we're fortunate to have been able to train, I think there's 5 new members over the last year to get on, and now this is the next step, is to get them their own gear so they're prepared and be able to go out and do these either water rescue or evidence recovery.
Makes sense.
Great.
So you were able to get a grant for, did I hear that correctly, a grant for like 13.8 for?
So this is funding, it's the Burn Jag federal funding, and this is actually 2018 funding that was held up during a period of President Trump's administration where the federal funds weren't being dispersed. So now we're at a stage where this back funding is now being released for different projects. So this is the first year. I anticipate coming before you with other projects for the police department with about the same amount of funding, and in the 13,000, 14,000 range, until we catch up to the 24.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
You're going to be relying on Union for winter dives?
No, I mean, we'll still continue to work with them. This just gives us the equipment.
I was just thinking of the dry suits.
Yeah, and that may be something in the future that we would be looking at. But first step, is to get each member their own suits so that they properly fit and they'll be safe when they do get into the water and perform these dives.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you for being proactive to the staff. I think the officers will really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, one question for you. Are there specific persons on the force dedicated to this work, or are all of them trained in this?
No, this is specific. So this would be a unit, and we ask for officers to really volunteer for it, to get involved in it. So we're thankful to have the interest that we have and the officers on our department to step up and do this extra training, and so we can be prepared for these type of situations.
Got it. All right. Do I hear a motion on this?
To approve item 9H and 9I.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Item J, Chief.
So item J is a request for a award to McGovern Municipal HQ. That's on a cooperative purchase agreement, and that would be to replace the current town manager's vehicle. So current, it's a 2014. It comes out of the fleet of the police department. It has approximately 98,000 miles. We aren't going to look to trade it in. We're going to utilize that vehicle for other needs within the police department, but this would be to purchase a new 2023 Chevy Equinox, and we're requesting a resolution in the amount of $31,500, or not to exceed that, with a built-in contingency there. Again, this funding would come out of the public safety vehicle account. So we do have that funding already appropriated within the 25 fiscal budget.
All right. Jim, go ahead.
Every town manager, town administrator in the state of Rhode Island has a vehicle provided either to them by the town to use or gives them an allowance. The allowance ranges from $500 to $1,000, depending on the town. And so this town has always provided the vehicle, which I think is good, because to get private insurance when you're using your vehicle for work is very difficult and costly. So it's a good benefit to have. But it always fell into the police department, which I never really understood once I got here. And they were always provided with a police vehicle, which is the one I have. And it's a Dodge Charger that is really suited for police officers. It has police plates in the trunk. The only thing I can think of is the town manager is also the director of public safety in the time of an emergency or incident. But, so I've been driving that car for about 2 years and 3 months. It's fine. It's not the vehicle itself, but it uses a lot of gas. It's a big vehicle and it's better suited for the police department. So instead of buying them a new vehicle at $50,000 plus to use, and I made the decision, give them the vehicle that best suits them. They can use it for, even though it's 10 years old, it's still in good shape, and it can be used for the administration part of their job. And then, but the vehicle, the Equinox I'm getting is the lowest priced vehicle we could find with all-wheel drive. There are, in the snowstorm, rainstorm, whatever, inclement weather, I'm out there in the role of Director of Public Safety. So you really need something that can get you through deep water or sand or whatever. But it is, I'm known to be frugal in the town, and this is the least expensive vehicle we could find that meets the standard in need. So that's really what it comes down to. I thought you and the residents deserve an explanation on that.
All right, thank you, Jim. Any questions?
Have you looked at Yugos?
Yeah. I'd rather drive a lawnmower than that.
Or a golf cart.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I mean, I think it's a 10-year-old car. I mean, and it's still in service, so it can go back to the police department. It still has a usable life. It's very likely that the $31,000 car will be used for 10 more years. I don't think it's a bad purchase regardless anyway, right?
Agreed.
Motion to approve item 9J.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Now we're on to item K, Chief.
So item K is a request, our standing orders in the police department. So we have standing orders, we have general orders. Standing orders for us to make any type of change to them, updates, revisions, we need to come in front of the council. So as part of our efforts with meeting the standards of accreditation, there's several changes that need to happen. These are only a few standing orders that we're looking at right now. One being the police baton. We no longer issue a police baton, so we'd look to eliminate that standing order altogether. That's not a tool that we use. And then others that it's changing a uniform. It's really when you go through just specific details that we want to make sure that our policies reflect exactly the practices that we're pursuing, but it's just the process that we need to go through in order to make these changes.
I've got a question for Mike. How is it this comes to us?
It's because it's in your charter. And so we're just discussing how we change that going.
I was going to say,
But
why
for
is it in the
But for
charter?
right now, it does require town council
Yeah.
oversight and approval.
I get that, but for what it's worth, do other cities and towns do this?
Very few.
Yeah.
So this is really an outdated policy. It's probably 50 years old, right? Elected officials should not be setting policy for police departments. It's not a modern practice. It should not be in the hands of elected officials. But if you notice these things that the chief is looks to change is uniform policies. They don't carry batons anymore, they carry something else. These are all things that any other police department just does administratively. The chief looks at it, it's not up to date, they change it, and that's how the accreditation process rolls. So this is something we will change, but because it's in our charter, we have to go, you know, it's a big change. Even Mike was just saying, our solicitor. So this is something we'll work on for the next cycle in an election to get that out of the hands of the elected officials and put in the administrative role of a police chief.
That's why I was asking the question, because when I worked in Providence, we would get notices from the chief of police, chief of fire department, that just said, standing orders are now changed to whatever. I've never seen this through a council before.
Yeah, we did it before. I remember this. So what is it, every 2 years this comes up?
No, really as needed, you know.
Okay.
I've been before you before on other ones. And as I said, we have general orders too. So it's just, these are specific, as they were set up as standard orders by the charter, then they have to, if there's any revisions or changes, then I come before you because of that. We have other ones, general orders, special orders, that we can just make administrative changes to. And there's really not a rhyme or reason, and some of them, the less lethal and less lethal force one, were mandated by the state on what that policy looks like. So when changes come about, you know, it's just the process of coming before you and presenting those changes. So we would be in favor of looking at changing that and allowing us the ability to make changes as time goes by to make sure we're just up to date and meeting our accreditation standards.
Got it. All right.
This is just an order of notice. When will that public hearing be, Susan?
We can advertise that for August 13th.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay.
Because what the charter requires, you have to do this by ordinance.
What is that, Mike?
You have to do it by ordinance.
Right. Okay.
And Mike, any change to the charter would require a town-wide referendum vote?
Right, during either a general or special election. And, but the council can recommend that change. So a charter change can be made by the council to be put on a referendum for the voters to decide. And when you do it, there may be some other areas of the charter we'd want to look at too. So instead of just doing one, you might want to do 5 or 6. So we can,
Gotcha.
It's kind of like a future project to think about.
All right, thank you.
Motion
right.
to approve item 9K.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we got item L, Chief.
Yes, so our last item was, I came before you in May. You approved an award to purchase a cruiser to replace one of our vehicles that was totaled during driving training by one of the recruits. At the time, we didn't have the insurance information of what was going to be of use from that car and what we could potentially transfer over into the new car. So we weren't prepared at the time for the upfit, both the lighting, emergency equipment, and the lettering of the cruiser. So this request is a resolution for Strobes and Moore, which is an MBA vendor, and for them to outfit the cruiser that we purchased from the May council meeting. It is a request of $15,000 or not to exceed $15,000 for the upfitting of that vehicle.
All right. Any questions for the chief on this one?
Motion to approve item 9L.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Luke Murray, come on up.
Good evening. Tonight I bring for the council's consideration the award of architectural contract for the school building project in the amount of $9,557,890.65. So a little background on this, as you know, and we've had these discussions before, on architects and engineers, state law requires that we go out to RFQ. The school building committee identified this scope of work early because the bond vote at that time was pending. So that goes back to December, and it's been 6 months in process. At that time, we had issued an RFQ, request for qualifications for architects, scope of services to cover the entire school project. So this would be stage 3 and stage 4 of the RIDE necessity of construction. We received 6 proposals at that time. By January 12th, a 7-member review panel was set up, if you recall, to review these. That panel consisted of 4 school building committee members, 1 town council member, and then 2 community members, including Doral Beasley, who regularly attends our meetings. The firms were shortlisted from 6 to 3 based on a scoring mechanism and review of references. After that, there were interviews conducted on March 4th for the 3 firms, and then scoring system was updated, and Studio Jade and Slam Collaborative were selected as the leader with 126.09 points. Following that, we went to council on March 13th, again anticipating the upcoming bond vote. The council at that time, if you recall, authorized us to move forward with initial scope of contract up until the bond vote, but also the most important part was that they allowed us the ability for the town manager to negotiate post-bond vote if it was an affirmative vote. That came and went. March 7th, that bond passed, and so the town manager did approach Studio Jade to negotiate a fee proposal. Studio Jade acted first, and I did outlay that in the memo. Initially, they were doing it on a cost basis of 8% of the contract, for a fee of $9.8 million, round numbers. And you can see the contingency, so the total number would have been $10.3 million, would have been the initial proposal. On their initial proposal that we took back to left field, our OPM, because we obviously rely on them for expert advice, the OPM advised that the total construction cost, real basis, was $117 million, and Studio Jade was basing it on $122 million, which included some escalation. So they recommended that we go back to Studio Jade and force them to go off the actual construction cost. The other recommendation was to go back with a counter proposal at 7.5%, which they felt was in line with industry average, and to negotiate based on that fee. We did go back to Studio Jade and Slam with that number. Phil and I spoke personally. The manager had negotiated with this, and we came back with a final proposal of 7.75%, so essentially met in the middle. And that equated to, based on the $117 million, to an equated fee of $9.1 million. So in that, we saved approximately $700,000 in the negotiation process. I followed up with the OPM left field again, and for the benefit of the council, I said, you know, obviously we want some validation. What are the industry costs that are out there? We want some validation of what's in the current climate. I included a table here in your memorandum. Pawtucket, Warwick, Middletown, North Providence comparables, all of which are building new high schools and middle schools, except less one, which is building 2 new elementary schools. And the percentages are as follows. In Pawtucket, their fee percentage is 8.5%, Warwick 7.9%, Middletown 8.5%, and North Providence at 7.95%. So I think we're well bought at 7.75%, given the scope of the project, which I outlined. So it's important to note that Studio Jade and Slam don't just do in-house services on the project, right? There's a litany of services and some consultants that they need for this project. So that includes mechanical engineering and plumbing, landscape architecture, they need an athletic facility designer, acoustical, I mean, you name it. There's a list, I think, of a dozen different sub-consultants that they're going to carry. So the Studio Jade, even though they're the manager of herding all the different consultants and making sure we're moving in the right direction, their actual fee is based on a percentage of the entirety of the consultants that are working for them. So we felt that we were well bought at that 7.75, given also the fact that scope of this project requires so many sub-consultants and expertise. It's important for the council to note that there's a couple items that are not part of this base fee. One is geothermal systems. We've been talking about that. We're not sure if we're moving forward with that. That could add a couple $100,000 onto this cost if we were to explore or continue to explore geothermal heating and cooling, because that's a whole different specialty. Studio Jade has included consulting services for the first phase of that, which is really exploration. So we're in that now. We expect to drop a test well in the next couple months. And then based on that, we determine if we want to move forward with a geothermal heating system. That and other considerations, outside funding, feasibility, and et cetera, et cetera. The other is environmental, as far as air quality on site. Studio Jade was specific in their proposal on this, that right now they do not have anything as far as air quality monitoring. So when you get on a site like this and the dust starts flying, they don't have anything in their contract currently to mitigate that or in that scope. So Phil's here, he can speak to that. But otherwise, it includes pretty much everything that we'd need to build a new high school and athletic complex. So with that, as far as financials and funding, I've expressed this to council in the past, right? I'm working with the finance director, as is the town manager, on coordinating a strategy to fund the project. So we have some funds identified early on to cover some of the short costs as far as design. I spoke with Brian today. We're going to have to look at a cash flow, and we'll be coming to council soon on what we think the bond rollout, bond anticipation note rollout, would be to front some of the other funds based on cash flow. So initially, what we're going to do is pocket some of the existing money that we have allocated into the accounts, so some for design, some for the OPM, but they won't be fully funded, right? And we don't need to because we're only expending short-term funds right now. Over time, once we roll in the bands, we'll start funding up those accounts. Again, it's just cash management. So that I mentioned that because you're not going to see on here a dedicated account right now to PEG under the current budget. We're going to move monies around, and the plan is to defer any interest as long as possible. Smart financial planning. So. And with that, I request your consideration of award for the $9,557,890.65. That includes a contingency of 5% on the project. Any questions?
Any questions for Luke?
Approximately, or do you have an idea what the cost would be for the air quality monitoring?
So in the proposal, they did include approximately $50,000. Is that correct, Phil? So round numbers.
That is included in here.
That is not included in here. The air quality is outside of this scope of services. If we needed additional air quality, it could be up to $50,000.
Okay. And have you guys gotten any of the PAYGO money yet?
No. No, we won't get PAYGO. PAYGO is based on your expenditures, so we have to expend. Basically, they refund a third for every 2/3 we put in. So we do have to expend some funds to get the PAYGO back. The only difference is we get that on the front end. We don't have to wait until we float the bonds at the back end and get reimbursements, basically pay down the bond. PAYGO simply says that we expend funds and they start doing reimbursements up front. So we got to spend money to get that money. So we will not see that PAYGO until we start spending some serious money.
I thought the PAYGO was they gave you a check up front per se.
I wish.
So Luke, when do you anticipate receiving some of the PAYGO? What year, month do we anticipate starting to get some of that in here?
So that's probably best left to Brian. I don't, not to put you on the spot, but you know, your thoughts based on your view of cash flow.
Excuse me. As Luke mentioned, that's something we're going over right now with Chris and Left Field. We're going over the cash flow statement, so we're trying to gauge what are the demands of the town in terms of costs early on. When will we meet that amount needed by the state to get that PAYGO money? But we're not sure yet when all the invoices will be coming in and when we'll hit that threshold to get the PAYGO in. So that is something we're working on now, but we don't have a definitive timetable on that yet.
And Brian, how much PAYGO will we be receiving? Is it around 9?
Yes, approximately.
And just to clarify, Luke mentioned you spend some to receive some. How does that work?
You have to spend a small, I don't recall what it was. 2/3 to 1/3. It is, I would say, okay, I'm glad I knew there was a third and 2/3. I was going to say spend a third to get the two. It was spend 2/3 to get the third. I had it
Spend
reversed.
2/3 of what to get 1/3 of what? Can you clarify that for me?
I believe the actual amount we'd be getting in PAYGO.
Okay, so you spend 2/3 of the PAYGO money we are going to receive, and then you
Correct.
receive 1/3 of it? Can you clarify that for me?
Good evening, everyone. Philip Conte with Studio Jade. So regarding PayGo, as Luke mentioned, it's really just the reimbursement that you get once you submit an invoice. For example, an invoice from us for design. We would submit to you. You could submit that to RIDE, and they will pay their share immediately.
Okay, let me walk through a hypothetical. Let's just say, hypothetically, we decided to use all of the PayGo towards this contract with you. We have to expend the monies to get the PayGo money from RIDE? How does it work?
So if you elect to use PayGo for our fee, every time we submit an invoice to you over the next several years, by the way, you would take that invoice, you would pay your share, and RIDE would immediately pay their share back to you.
Okay, so if, for example, if our PayGo is around 9, and your contract here is around 9, we would pay you the 9 over time and get reimbursed by RIDE the 9 over time? Is that how it would work?
That may have a little bit, since our invoices are going to be spread out over several years, I think you may want to capture the PayGo sooner.
Okay.
So I think so our base percentage is 35%, right, without the bonuses.
Yeah.
So what RIDE says is we don't count the bonuses until down the road, the end. When you finish your project, then we qualify you, and then you get your reimbursement with the bonuses, right? So the reason I say 1/3, 2/3 is 100%, about 35% is about 1/3, right? So we submit an invoice for, let's call it simple, $100,000. They'll cover 35% of that, right, currently under the base rate, up to once we hit $9 million, right? Then they stop paying PayGo. So, if it's essentially they're covering the base rate on a reimbursement now, and then we top out. So if we in order to get that $9 million, we need to put out about $27 million.
Okay, I
approximately.
follow.
So
I
I'm
see what
taking
you're
a
saying.
third, right? Does that make sense?
That does.
I
right,
know
thank
it's
you.
convoluted, but the bottom line is that we're not going to see that money till reason I say a significant amount of money, we have to lay out $27 million to get the 9.
Where does the 27 million come from?
Whatever we expend. So it could be designer, it could be
No, I
hard
mean,
cost.
will you be taking out loans at that point in time?
Yes.
Or will you
It'll
be taking?
it'll be bond anticipation
Okay.
notes.
All right, I think I got it. Thank you, Luke.
Yep.
All right, Phil, I know you already came up, but if you want to speak at all, this involves, us entering into agreement with you, and your firm, so go ahead if you want to say anything on the record here to us.
Sure. No, I just want to say that our relationship started almost 3 years ago, and we have about another 3 years to go. We have built a very solid team. You have a very solid project. You have community support that we will be mindful of. We know that we need to be stewards of the project, particularly in terms of cost and program, et cetera. So I am committing to you that we will do so, and I'm confident that at the end of which would be a 6-year relationship, you will have a spectacular project that you will all be very proud of.
All right, thank you, Phil. Any questions? Go ahead.
So, July 30th, will you be at that community forum?
Yes.
Okay. So that is July 30th, 6 to 8 at the high school, at Curtis Corner, where is, I can't remember.
It's here.
It's here at Town Hall?
It's here at Town Hall.
Okay. And so people will be able to give you feedback on the design, because as I understand it, is the SLAM Collaborative doing the one piece of it and you're doing another piece? They're doing...
Sure. They will be the architect of record, we will be the engineer of record, but
Right.
we're managing the entire project. The agenda for July 30th is really to honor our commitment to the community, to listen, now that we have a project that is moving forward. We will have some high-level information regarding the project. We have incorporated a number of questions so that we have our interactive polling component to it, so that we can solicit feedback. We are looking to complete our schematic design around the end of September, so we will be coming to you in October, November, with our schematic design.
Great.
All right. Any other questions?
On the schematic design, he just, in October, just showing it to the council, or are you looking for something from the council to say, yep, keep going, or?
Sure, so that's a great question. There are a number of gateways to go through for the RIDE design review process, the first being schematic design, where we will first solicit a recommendation from the school building committee to come to you, as well as the school committee for approval to submit that schematic design. And we will do that again at design development, and we will do that again at construction documentation. So you will be an integral part of this review process.
All right.
So, July 30th, just to go back, would it be helpful if we were there? Is this a meeting for the community to give input and, help me out to try to figure out, I'm trying to plan if I'm going to go there. Do you need us to attend and represent, or will we have opportunities to give input, or should we go to the school building committee?
So we do not plan on showing any design work on July 30th. It's to offer the community an opportunity to express their concerns, listen to any comments, answer any questions that we can. So this is the first step. I'll leave it up to you if you want to spend the evening here again.
I'd like to add something to that, though. So I know all the council has day jobs and everyone works, but I would encourage any council member that can attend, any staff person will attend. The reason for that is these numbers are large. And I'm sure there's residents looking at right now that will be contacting many of you saying, did we anticipate these numbers? These numbers are extremely large. We did. We anticipated all of this. This is part of building the new high school. And, some people have sticker shock, but this is all these numbers that we're looking at were anticipated. And if you look at the comparison of what his company is charging versus other cities and towns, we're actually getting a pretty good deal on that. And, we saved $700,000, which is substantial money as well. But the bottom line is in the way we take this, the staff is, the voters have spoken. 55% voted for a high school, and that is our task to build this high school, and we are confident. We need project managers, we need engineers, we need architects, we need all the people involved. The reason is the state is giving us 52% of the money to do this at the end. They just don't hand it to you. You have to do this right. They're just going to entrust a city or town with tens of millions of dollars and hope that we do it right. We have to do it right. It's the biggest project this town has ever seen. Every time you accept grant money or state assistance, Peacedale Community Learning Center, whatever, you have to check off all the boxes and have professionals plan, design, and build. So if someone's watching this and they're looking at it and they're in panic mode right now, they shouldn't be. We anticipated all these numbers.
Thank you, Jim. All right. Go ahead.
Just a quick question, probably for Luke. Is this going to be recorded and/or live streamed on the 30th?
So it is going to be recorded. It will be live streamed. The SBC would like to have a Zoom component. We currently don't have that capability here. I'm working with the IT director on trying to get that capability so we could have interactive. We did a session like that over at the high school. They're a little bit more equipped because they do that on more often occasion with Zoom. So I'm working on it, but at a minimum, it will be live streamed and recorded.
And then it'll be available on the SBC website as well afterwards.
Correct.
So I'm going to just put it out there that the school building committee meets at a time where the majority of people are working at their paying job that pays the bills. So is there any interest from the school building committee to change their time to not be Thursdays at 8:30 in the morning?
Once the summer is over,
Yeah.
we will.
Okay.
That will be, the reason is because of everyone there also, some of those people are volunteers and they have other jobs and vacations and so forth. That's the best time for us to meet for this summer. We'll reevaluate it at the end of the summer, but I would anticipate we would probably go back to the Thursday nights again. Not a lot of people show up though at those meetings.
Well,
I mean,
most people couldn't show up at 8:30. That is a time that if you have if you're not,
No one showed up when we had them at 7 at night. No one showed up when we had them at 6 at night or 4 in the afternoon. They don't. So, I mean.
but
we-
now the project, now the project is advancing. The bond passed, people are, we're spending 8 million, all this.
Right.
People are still talking about it, so they may show up. I'm just saying,
Well-
no one can really show up if it's 8:30 on a weekday.
Yeah, I hear you, but history has not demonstrated that they show up at all. I mean, most of the meetings have 1 or 2 people. When it got closer to the election, more people showed up, but even then it was only a handful. It's very important at this time to get the full school building committee to meet, to make these important decisions, and that's why we had to change it to 8:30. But we'll reevaluate it and go back to, the other time frame, as long as the committee can meet then. It is important to us for transparency that everyone knows what's coming, they can see it, we want people involved in it. And and if you look at one of the other things we're doing, all the boards, commissions, and committees are all going to meet now, with hopefully in the chamber, and live stream them. So we'll do the best we can to get it where it needs to be.
Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 9M.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Phil. It's going to move us to item N, discussion and/or action regarding a contract awarded May 13, 2024 to Union Studio for architectural design services to prepare architectural concepts for affordable housing as requested by Councilmember Patty Alley. Patty, go ahead.
This is regarding some information that was presented to me by the Affordable Housing Committee. And it's the May 7th contract for Union Studios, which it says, for all 3 sites, the goal is to develop affordable, attainable housing that will be sold with a potential mix of 80 to 120% area median income, although there may be some full market rate units as well to help offset development costs, along with annual common space maintenance costs. So it appears as though the money came from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and my question is, that's not what I anticipated. It seems as though what we really had discussed was housing between 50 and 120%, and we were talking about partnering with the Women's Development Corporation and Habitat, and both of those agencies target. One is at 60% for the rental units. That's the Women's Development Corporation. And the other one is Habitat. And so those are more, I think, at the 80% is what I read today. But so, or maybe it's not. But in any case, it seems like those 2 things that we actually have discussed would not be included in this work that we're having Union Studios do for South Road. And then the other question that was raised to me was that apparently the Women's Development Corporation and Habitat will do some design build services. I'm just calling them that. We're calling them here architectural concepts, but like the site engineering, the existing building evaluations are specifically excluded. So I'm wondering if the architectural renderings could be included as the Affordable Housing Committee has indicated that they are routinely included in such things. So those are my general questions. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Alley. as you were speaking, I was trying to write down so I can respond in a somewhat systematic area. I think what Patty's referring to is, again, the contract with Union Studios, and I want to point out a few things with regards to that contract, that this is a evaluation and concept development for those 3 sites. As they develop those concepts, they have to look at the financial aspects of that. And if you recall during prior presentations that our department made to you, both in executive session on one matter when we were looking at a 4th site, as well as a subsequent presentation about the economics of housing in South Kingstown, is that there was a broad range of discussion with regards to affordability. We looked at what your housing authority does, and that would be on the lower end of the affordability structure. Then we looked at what you do through the development community through the permitting process, which is the 80 to 120, either home ownership or rental. And what was discussed in some aspects is there is a gap between the lower and what is called affordable housing. But there was a broad discussion on what you're trying to, we'll use the term fix or achieve through this process. And I remember showing you a kind of a pendulum and a scale, that the more subsidies you have with a lower rate of housing, the more financial assistance you need. So in our discussions with Union Studios and the contract that was signed, which was referenced in a May 7th memo that was sent to the council, and that's what you voted on, this exact language was attached to that memo. But to Patty's point, I'd like to point out that the contract says a potential mix of 80-120 and potential mixing some market rates. But the next sentence or bullet point says that final ownership of the properties and arrangement of rentals or ownership are still to be determined. So there is a process to this design aspect that there isn't anything cast in stone without the affordability side. So I'm not standing before you this evening to say that a decision has been ultimately made with 80, 100, 120 rental or market rate. It is a potential mix, and it is yet to be determined. In that contract, it also talks about the fact that the town council needs to weigh in as an entire entity with regards to the complexity and the makeup of these developments. So there's a substantial amount of infrastructure costs that are going to be involved in these sites. One, being the Watson property, may need sewer extended to that. That could be between $500,000 and $1 million. Either the town pays for that, you get a subsidy from the state or federal government for that, or some other aspect of the project has to pay for that. South County Road will require a sewer extension, or they'll have to provide on-site wastewater treatment facilities. There's a cost of both of those options. On-site wastewater means that your density may be affected because land you would use for development may potentially have to be used for on-site wastewater treatment. To bring sewer in may be another $500,000 to $1 million to extend that sewer line. It's available, we'll say within a half a mile, but it would still need to be undertaken. On both, primarily with South Road, probably has the biggest infrastructure costs because there's no internal road system. So if you're looking at a dense development there, you have to run sewer, water, and roads into that development to get the appropriate density to make it worthwhile. All of that costs money. So again, without subsidies or without government intervention on the money side, the mix of market rate may be affected. So if the project was we'll just say there's a $5 million infrastructure bill. Roads, utilities, electric, water, sewer. If you get 50 units there, that's $100,000 a unit. Someone or some entity has to be able to afford to pay for that. So either it's a subsidy through the private sector, a subsidy through the public sector, or a partnership. That section also goes on in that bullet to state that the town is interested in exploring several options to provide affordable housing development at the sites, to include direct sales of the property with development stipulations, public-private partnerships, collaboration with community development corporations or nonprofits, and/or direct management of the property prior to redevelopment. Consideration should be given to referencing the town's cottage ordinance and/or village design. So this is the process to conceptual layout that I think everything is still on the table and decisions haven't been made from my perspective. And again, Patty, I know you're shaking your head right now, so I'm interested in your response so that I can try and best address it. With regards to discussions about Habitat for Humanity and Women's Development Corporation, those are options always available to the town council about entertaining a contractual relationship with any one or both of those groups. I attended those meetings with the Women's Development Corporation. They're not interested in single-family development. They're only interested in rental development. So if you look at a site like South Road and someone looks at that for single-family development, that may not be viable for Women's Development Corporation. But I don't know what the development potential of South Road School is right now, whether it's single-family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, sixplex, or for larger apartment building. That's why Union Studios was retained to work through that development analysis. Within their scope of services, there are planned public participation meetings. Luke Murray and I were just going through with Union Studios our brochure material about having work sessions close for South Road School, potentially at South Road School, to invite the community. For the Oliver Watson House, we were looking at the church, which may not be viable, so we're backing up to Union Fire District and their facilities there. For the Wakefield School, having a work session there, so that the community, as well as the council, can react to some conceptual plans. They're also planning within their scope to meet with a group of commission members where the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, EDC, Affordable Housing Collaborative, Council, all invited to a public meeting to discuss conceptual layout as well as density, so that you can look at the schematics of how these projects will be financed. The Women's Development Corporation did a great job in their presentation, but one thing that was important is that they explained that their projects are 3, 4, 5 years and take substantial public subsidies to be involved, whether it be a grant from Rhode Island Housing or their ability to sell tax credits with regards to their income status. So again, from my perspective, a decision hasn't been made on the complexity of what units are sold for or rented for. A decision hasn't been made on who will or won't develop these projects. All of that is still an open and frank discussion to be held.
Jamie, I just really, I appreciate what you're saying, but, and I don't have the current contract, but it's my, my feeling that the only thing that we can count on is what is contained within the four corners of this contract. And this contract clearly states that Union Studios will be developing the concept for 80 to 20% of area median income. And right now, the thing is, we've addressed the under 50% with the FHA housing, but we're not addressing anything between like 51 and 80% with this. And that's really what we're missing in this community.
Yeah, Patty, the only response that I have for that is regardless of what they design. So a home is still a home. So if it's a 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom home, there's still a cost to create that structure, whether it's sold at 50%, 60%, 80, or 120. What I'm saying before you is the design, the conceptual design has to occur. Once that occurs, You have a development footprint, you have an idea of construction costs, you have an idea of what road infrastructure you need, sewer, water, and all those mechanisms, and then you can determine what a project like that may cost, which is included in Union Studios' proposal. Once you know that dollar amount, you can then back out, again, say it's $5 million, total construction costs of the units. If you're going to sell those at 50% of the cost to develop, someone needs to bring $2.5 million to the table to be able to sell it for 50%.
Right.
We don't know those numbers yet.
Well,
Once
we have talked a lot about relying on the infrastructure grants that have been available. Obviously none of us know what's going to come with this next election, but what I thought we were going to do was try to finance putting in the infrastructure that would essentially allow Habitat, for instance, and we would retain ownership and the person pays like a long-term land use or lease for it, but they actually own the home. So essentially my understanding from that meeting was that we would be subsidizing essentially the land, and that so instead of somebody having to spend $500,000 for a home, they would spend $300 because we would be able to put the infrastructure in place with some of the grants that we see or saw
And again,
available.
the ultimate sales price of the unit or whoever you partner with is going to be dependent on the financial resources available. And you also discussed, if I recall, as a council, and someone can correct me if I misheard or I misrepresent some of the comments, that you also wanted a mix of social economic class within the development, that you didn't potentially want one structured social economical class in the development. So again, it could be a mix of 50, 60, 80, 120, or market rate, and if I misheard anyone as a council as a whole, I don't recall the council ever instructing us to develop a project solely for 50 and 60% medium income.
I'm saying 50 to 120.
All right,
So-
go ahead.
You're excluding a lot.
I'm going to try to salvage some of this a little bit. So I'm taking this all in. I didn't really know what the agenda item was. It sounds like Patty's upset about the language in the contract, feeling very,
I'm gonna
But-
make copies of it so everybody can see
Okay.
exactly what I'm talking about.
that's fine. It sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, she feels like we've constricted ourselves to a certain thing. But what Jamie has said is, nope, we're just in the design phase, we're trying to figure out what's possible, and the baseline cost of, it's fixed costs, right? It's the infrastructure is a fixed cost. So if Union Studio says you can get 30 different things, and we know the fixed costs are going to be whatever, $10,000, it's whatever that comes out to be. I'm not adding it correctly. But I think I do understand you. I also hear you saying that in future junctures, the council will sort of look at this and go, okay, we're going to be flexible and give this percentage to this income and this percentage to this income level, correct?
Yeah, and I want to, nothing can occur ultimately
Correct.
without the council making
you.
a decision. So, for instance, we'll use South Road as an example. If 30 homes fit at South Road, the planning department, the town manager department, legal does not make the decision on the complexity of what
Correct.
the units are sold for. That is a town council decision.
So I think, and you mentioned executive session, and then we've talked about this in public session, correct? When we talked about starter homes at
Yes.
South Road School, we talked about addressing 3 areas. I guess maybe we definitely talked about this in public. That the Oliver Watson home would work on the gap with, there's not senior housing, and that the South Road School could work on the gap of starter home housing, whether it wasn't starter home, it was
more like, I just assumed that it would be like 50 to 120, like a I was
I wouldn't-
hoping for
but-
a combination of like some rentals and some houses.
Well, I didn't think we had that conversation. I thought South Road was gonna be more starter homes for young couples or retiring couples who are downsizing. Is people moving in or people moving down? And we didn't talk at all, to my recollection, about any percentages related to AMI or,
Well,
so-
I mean, I'm taking it from the meeting that I attended.
right,
here.
right.
And that was all we talked about, so to see this like
Yep,
this.
I
is
understand.
Like, just a
I
distance.
So
have a
then
few follow-up questions.
The third site is Wakefield School, and we talked about that, and we talked about a mixed use where it's some whatever on the lower level, and then a mixture of apartments and other housing that's both affordable and market rate, because we want to have that parcel active, you know, not just 9 to 5 during a business hours of operation. We wanted some vibrancy. We wanted people to be able to walk to work. And so that was going to maybe address the gap of rentals. So I walked away thinking senior in West Kingston, starter homes in South Road, and apartments and mixed use in Wakefield. That was just me.
So if I can just follow up, I think everyone has
A piece of the puzzle.
comments and a piece of the puzzle, but what I'm trying to implore of you this evening is that we need to develop development concepts for the sites. There are 3 different sites, and each site may independently serve a different purpose for what you feel are the goals of the community, Patty. So Oliver Watson may be slightly different than South Road. South Road may be slightly different than Wakefield. So that's also what was important for us to look at all 3 sites and the development potential for those, because you may be able to tick off boxes for your different objectives at different sites. And until you know what can fit there and what you look and want density-wise and aesthetically, we can't come up with costs
But
that
why can't
ultimately
we at
drive
least include
financing.
the range? Like, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
Wait, let me follow up. Can I ask a few follow-ups with you? Jamie, so you seem to be saying that whatever we've identified in here as the goal for the scope of services that Union is performing is not relevant. We explicitly state in here the goal is 80 to 120% AMI. But you're stating here tonight that even though it says this here in the contract, we still have to get some sort of schematics before we can even decide, what the makeup as far as AMI can be in these certain sites.
What I'm saying is you are not bound
We are not
as a
bound, but it states
council
this.
by that language in this contract to put on into the marketplace 50%, 60%, or 80%.
Them to do this work, we might as well.
You're
have it
paying
done.
them to do a conceptual layout. If you can separate what the end product will be potentially marketed for, they need to lay out a development pattern that functionally works for you as a council. Because the cheapest thing to do would be a really big apartment complex at South Road. But that's not in their contract. They're laying out development scenarios so that you can react to, that then they can put financial numbers to, so that you can determine what you're going to put these into the marketplace at. I'm here defending the fact that if you came out 4 months, 5 months from now and liked one of the development scenarios at one of the sites and came to the conclusion that you financially, the state came up with financing and you want to put all of them out there at 50%, this language is non-binding on you as a council. It is a conceptual aspiration contained in the contract for them to do conceptual layouts for development patterns on 3 different sites.
So all this is doing is just drawing out neighborhoods.
We're
Exactly.
drawing neighborhoods. Ultimately, how those neighborhoods are developed, financed, and structured is dependent on what funds are available at that time. Mr. Manning and I have sat in many meetings with the Rhode Island Department of Housing asking for how much money is available, and we can't get a definitive answer of what is available and when.
One of the things I'm going to throw out there, and I don't know if it's too late, I'm sure it is. You're right with the cost of infrastructure for South Road. It's going to be pretty costly. Curtis Corner already has all the utilities. Not Curtis, yeah, Curtis Corner, where the junior high is now. Swap the two pieces of property.
We can't, we have the athletics,
Right, the
So-
athletic isn't built yet.
But Mr. Sweet, to that point, the utilities exist there, and one of the options is to go through that property during construction to bring sewer into the backside of South Road
But if
without
it-
having to dig up.
But if it was swapped out, you wouldn't have to go
That's
3
a
or
question
4 or
for
500 feet.
Yeah, a question for the school board and Mr.
Right.
Murray.
So we also, we want to be mindful of when we create housing, we want to create it for all income levels in that same place. Because you don't want to just create, that's where those people live. Like to just say like it's all 50% or all 30%, then you become, that's not what a vibrant community is. There's not enough diversity in that little group, so that we don't want that either. We need, and as I'm hearing him say these things, the fair market people pay for the infrastructure or subsidize the cost so that you can create that diversity of groups. So we you know, the housing developments that we have are just plunked and they're isolated. We hear multiple presentations about how it's very isolated and not integrated and cut off from the community. And this is going to be in a community that we can create and in a community that already exists. So I hear this as we just need to move the design pieces forward, and we're going to still have an opportunity for input and determination of what's going where and what populations. I just feel like you're upset, and I don't know.
I'm really upset because I feel like we're ignoring a complete segment of the population. I really don't like the way it's structured.
I just want to do, I don't think anybody but you thinks that, because we feel like, I'm going to speak, that they're giving us an idea and concept, and we're going to say, we want A and B and a little bit of
If
C.
they only give us stuff that's like way above what we're going to be able to afford, why can't we just see things that would fit within the 600,000? Why are we excluding the Women's Development Corporation? They won't even get a shot at this, will they?
Well, we didn't want to build rentals at South Road School. We wanted, we
talked about, we haven't actually decided anything, but I just feel like this locks us into something. But,
ahead,
you know,
Mike.
I guess you guys all feel that it's fine, so we'll just have to really keep an eye on it. That's all I can
No.
say.
I don't think anybody says that it's fine. I think the problem is, I heard what Jamie said. He's saying that the council still has options, and we're looking at a number of possibilities on several different sites. But Patty is right. The way this language reads, Jamie, for all 3 sites, the goal is to develop affordable, attainable housing that will be sold with the potential mix of 80 to 120% AMI, although there may be some full market rate units as well to help offset development costs. That sounds like the decision has been made. And that's the problem. I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Yeah. And that is what I thought was we were going to discuss this further.
Right.
But that particular language doesn't make it sound that way. That doesn't mean it's not true.
The decision has already been made, apart from us.
No, we make the decision.
What I'm trying to say to you is they have to start somewhere on a conceptual basis. So if you removed that sentence, if that sentence just read, for all 3 sites, the goal of developing workforce housing is the goal of the council. The goal is to create workforce housing. And we left the income aspect out of the discussion. You have to have someone look at the development potential for those parcels. Once you look at the development potential, someone develops a conceptual plan, you will get a cost of development. Once you have the cost of development, you can expand the discussion on the affordability aspect. I am not here before you, nor have I ever been before you, to say that you can't go up or down on your discussion or end up somewhere in the middle. So Patty, you are, from my perspective, you are not shut out on your intention and expectations that there would be more or lower affordability buy-in at 50, 60, 80, 100, and 120. This doesn't preclude you as a council to debate that and ultimately vote on the complexity of what the units will ultimately hit the market at. It also doesn't predicate you from looking at a conceptual design and saying, I don't like single-family housing at this. I would like to see an alternative of larger rental. None of that is precluded from this process. This
Jamie, how much
process will
work has been done on that so far by them?
How much work? We've had preliminary discussions, and they're starting to develop concept layouts, but those concept layouts will not be given to us probably for another 3 or 4 weeks.
So minimal work? Minimal?
Minimal right now.
So what I would say is, this is an initiative by the council. Whatever the council wants, we'll do it. If this contract is not what the town council expected or wants to move forward with, we'll amend it. So it was my understanding was workforce housing, but so if you as a council want us to change it, we'll amend it. So, but we need clear direction on what you want so that this won't happen again.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit.
Jamie, hold on.
Yep.
Let's talk this out a little bit. First off, the contract has been awarded. To amend a contract requires consideration, right? We'd have to pay them excess here?
Well, I don't know if we'd have to pay them more. It takes two parties, so they'd have to be amenable to agreeing in their analysis to bring that number down to 50%. Now,
hold on,
I
I have
don't
two
see
questions.
why, I don't think that's a big ask.
Yeah.
I don't see why that would be a problem for them, because of all the things Jamie said tonight, it shouldn't be a problem. But yes, to amend a contract would require, so we could go to them, we could talk to them, we could explain the discussion that happened, and we can say to them, if you desire, the council, when you do this, figure 50 to 120 as opposed to 80 to 120.
So
Well,
let it go back.
I have a few follow-ups here. I'd like to just kind of keep going with them if I could. I'm just going to go for them here.
No, but
Just allow me a few minutes here to just address my questions. I'll hand it over to you next. I want to talk about, when we started out here, you talked about, we have the Housing Authority, which addresses the lower side of the AMI.
Yes.
Now, what do they provide? Is that up to 60%? They address those needs? Can you clarify that for me?
They deal with vouchers, and I believe up to 60%.
Okay. And then
But again, the majority of theirs is 40 and below. That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Now, we also have the private developers who go through the comprehensive permit process, right? Was that 20% to 25% affordable?
Yes.
Okay.
And that runs
And then
again.
this with Union Studios is intended to meet that middle area there, that unaddressed middle where we sort of have that missing middle, I'll call it, for example. So in light of what we just said here, Housing Authority meets those needs up to 60% AMI. I'm okay with amending this to be 60% to 120%. I think that more represents the missing middle in South Kingstown here. I think there is a strong need for the 80% to 120%, that middle-class workforce that can't find housing here. But because the Housing Authority provides aid and subsidized housing up to those 60% AMI, there is no one addressing that 60 to 80. So I think this should be amended to be 60 to 120. That's my feelings.
And I don't think that would potentially be an issue with modifying that contract with Union Studios to reflect that in that bullet point, which references 80 to 120, to change that 60 to 120.
Okay, go ahead.
okay. So tomorrow night at the planning board meeting, there's an item on the agenda where someone isn't going to build affordable units, but they're going to do a payment in lieu of. So my question is, where does that money go?
So the payment in lieu of is a little over, I think right now, or in 2022, it was a little over $120,000 per unit. So that would go to your affordable housing fund and potentially could be utilized for infrastructure improvements.
So,
The intent of that is to supply units to the marketplace.
okay. Pause. So my understanding of the project, and I didn't think about it in terms of AMI percentages. I thought about who would we be creating the housing for? It's for the teacher, it's for the nurse who works at South County Hospital, who can't live here, and they drive 45 minutes to Warwick. That makes no sense. From Warwick, it makes no sense. That I don't know what the income AMI is for a nurse or whatever. I wasn't fixed on a range of incomes. I was trying to identify people who can't buy a home here, a young couple, or, you know, not to call you out, you have yet to buy a home and you're in your 30s, right? So like, because it's hard to buy one here, we don't have that opportunity. And if we don't make it possible by using this property in some way, we're never gonna get someone that's 32 to live here because they can't buy a home, because people are literally knocking down things and building a $900,000 home. It's crazy. So we need to incentivize that. So that's why I'm confused, Patty, because you're nodding, but I'm like, but that's what probably 80 to 120 is.
Oh, well, I mean, I've actually done the math, like on the third, on how much I have a chart about at each rate, at 30%, I believe it's like $10 an hour, and then it goes up. I have it all. I'm not sure if that's what.
I understand,
I mean,
but I think that we need to. I trust Jamie is working on this, and I think he captured our sentiments. I don't know, whenever that was, in the winter. I feel like that was the winter time, and so I whether we amend the contract or not, it doesn't matter to me, because what I also hear is we have the ultimate determination of what gets built there, and in each site, whether we want a percentage of income, percentage of rentals, whatever. I mean,
Well, the next council will have that, but I want to make sure that no matter who's on the council, that we'll be able to have housing that's affordable for a variety of people.
You know, it might be helpful, Patty, since this is your item, if you feel that number should be changed, make a motion, see if there's a second, have discussion, and that way we can give direction to Jamie.
Well, my only question is, Deb, the 60% is, I believe that the FHA only goes up to 50, so I'm trying to find out what that real number is. Because Jamie said that most of the people are at like 40%. I thought it went up to 50. So if it only goes up to 50, then we're only addressing 60. So that's kind of what I was just trying to.
So Jamie, I'll ask the question again. The Housing Authority provides subsidized housing to those up to what amount of AMI? Is it 60%? Brian Wagner,
Mr.
come on
Wagner's
up.
checking for the moment. Okay. But from a conceptual standpoint, if you wanted it to be 50 to 120, it doesn't necessarily change your consultant's ability to do layout and design. It only affects the back end on how you're going to finance this and structure it over time. It doesn't, if it fits 40 houses, it fits 40 houses. If they're all 1,200 square foot, 3 bedrooms, there's a cost to that. If you want simple homes or slightly upgraded homes, that's just a number in a spreadsheet. In the end, the more subsidies you get, the higher quality housing you can build for a less than market rate cost. So there's a lot of dynamics on the back end of the design on what you're going to be able to financially afford and at what market rate you're going to be able to put them out. You may, if the aspiration's 50 or 60%, you may have to wait additional years for all the funding to become available. Again, the Women's Development Corp stated on times they've applied multiple times, missed the first and second round of funding until the third or fourth round, and it's 3 years later. So these things don't happen in a vacuum, and they don't happen in a 6 to 12 month period. There's some funding, consulting funds available. There's only $400,000 available, and they're giving away a $100,000 grant. So that means if 4 towns apply for $100,000, 4 out of 39 municipalities in Rhode Island get housing assistance funds. So some of their programs are grossly underfunded, and they realize that, but that's all they have for one of the programs this year.
So it looks like 80 to 120 is considered middle income, whereas I guess probably under 80 or between 50 and 80 would be considered affordable. I'm just guessing, but I'm looking at the State of Rhode Island Middle Income Loan Program, and it's between 80 and 120.
Again, it's on the low.
All right. Here's where I'm at. I'm going to restate my position. It is my understanding that the Housing Authority provides subsidized housing to those up to 60% AMI. We also have this comprehensive permit process by which private developers build developments, and they're required to have 20 and 25% affordable. Okay, to meet that missing middle in the middle there, I believe that represents about at or around 60% through 120% AMI. I would like to amend the language of this contract with Union Studios to reflect that the schematics, the goal of the schematic work services that we are engaging with them for should be 60% through 120% AMI. That's what I believe it should represent. That's where I'm at. Does anyone agree with me on that?
I agree with you.
Well, in designing, all they're doing is laying out houses to create a neighborhood at this point.
They're looking at neighborhood layouts, whether they're single-family, duplex. Patty mentioned the side hustle houses.
But it's just laying it out at this point.
It's a layout.
Then why is that range even in there if all they're doing is laying out?
Again, it helped them with a certain aspect of how much infrastructure may be able to be afforded, how much market rate may be needed to carry the subsidized housing. It was a range for them to work from, but again, the numbers go into a spreadsheet, and the numbers in the spreadsheet can be adjusted. That's why I think if you ask to amend the contract to 60 to 120 or 50 to 120, I do not think it's a heavy lift with the discussions with Union Studios to amend that language in the contract.
So they're doing more than just laying out the neighborhood. They're associating a cost to create the neighborhood.
They need to develop because a pretty picture is meaningless if it ends up being a $50 million project versus a $30 million project, and you can never build it. So in the scope of services, there are cost evaluations associated with their conceptual plans.
Then I would go along with what you're saying then.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to make a motion to that effect. All right? So the motion is to amend the contract with Union Studios. We're going to need their agreement to this as well to reflect that the language that's in question right now to reflect 60% to 120% AMI. Is that clear enough so we understand what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and that's something I can work with Jamie on with the contractor and ask for that amendment. Yes, that's pretty straightforward.
All right. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, all council members, for I think, a good discussion.
I appreciate all your hard work, and I don't want you to walk away and think that I think that you did anything improperly or incorrect. I don't want it to be accusatory that you didn't do right, because I do think the change doesn't really matter. I think we're still going to get the same product, but now we're negotiating a change in range. That's my takeaway.
Again, do not take offense to the discussion tonight. I think it's valuable, and it will ultimately end up with a product that you can be proud of.
And Jamie, we look forward to the work product from Union Studios.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's going to bring us to item O, discussion of town council goals and objectives, section 2, education and training, and section 3, facilities and infrastructure, as requested by Councilmember Greg Sweet. Greg, go ahead.
In this year's budget, 500 pages, whatever it is, there's a section in there of town council goals and objectives. One of the sections has to do with education and training. And one of the things that the town council should, or said that they should be looking at, is all schools should be rated 5-star schools. What's being done to assure the schools are 5-star rated?
Well, Greg, I'll just say that the expertise as to that lies at the school department, so maybe that's something for a subsequent time in a joint meeting to have with them.
But if we have these for objectives and goals, then shouldn't we be telling them, what are you doing to achieve this? This is what we expect, and you're not achieving it?
Yes, we should be.
We should be on all those under the education, I think. The zero gap, I'm not really sure what that is. There's a couple of them I don't know truly what they are, but I think if they're in here, we should be making sure that they're being done. Also, under facilities and infrastructure, there's a line in there, on or before January 1st, 2022, the Town Facilities Division will prepare a town-wide facilities condition report documenting the current deficiencies in town-owned buildings. Town-owned, to me, is the school and the municipal side.
Not legally. The municipal side, yeah. Sorry. The municipal side, I agree. The school side,
Well,
by statute, it's not ours.
They just rent it from us.
They don't.
Yeah, but there is a state statute that makes the school committees responsible for all school grounds. They have complete and total control of school grounds until such time as they turn the building back over to us. So that really is and councils, not only this council, but other councils, are never really happy about that reality, especially if they want to put in one town, they want to do a synthetic turf field with the school department saying, and the town saying, but wait a minute, no, it's not your land, it is the school committee's land. They decide. That's where so that is true. What Mike is saying about municipal buildings versus school is actually true.
Because this says town buildings, and
Yeah, it's a
school
town
is a town building.
It just may be we're mincing words. It may be a town building, but the control over it is the school committee.
Just, I believe that those goals were from the 2020 and 2022 term, and I know that we discussed our own goals back in a meeting in April. I'm not really sure, though, if we ever updated them, because I'm not completely sure that everybody, turned their answers in. Jim, do you remember that? Us talking about that? I was going back through my emails, and I noticed that it was in April.
April of the year before.
Or maybe it must have been 2
Yeah.
years ago, yeah.
No, I did not get any updates. I will say this. I know exactly what the priorities of this council are, and we work every day to fill them. I mean, it's very clear to me. I knew him from the day he got elected, and we talked about it. I didn't need a piece of paper to tell me. Of course, it would have been nice to get a piece of paper with stated goals and objectives on them, but, I mean, it was obvious affordable housing is the top priority to me that this council is facing, and they're working hard to get to that point. The schools, tax rates, municipal court, housing court, rental registration. These were all priorities in kind of that order too, and we've accomplished just about all of them. So yeah, there is a deficiency on what is stated in that report, and I would have liked to seen it updated, but it didn't get done because for whatever reason. It was so, but I don't need that to tell me what the priorities are, because I listen very clearly and I know what the priority is of this council sitting here today. What I would say is, in the future, if it's a priority of this council, which it should be, we'll update them. And then we'll get full participation. And a lot of the stuff we got a year and a half ago was concepts that never really got solidified, or for whatever reason they didn't get documented. And so I would say this is a good discussion to have for the next council. That whatever the priorities are, the next council, day one we should start working on them and hopefully get a report.
Well, another way I would look at it is, if there's going to be anything in here, there should be something in there to monitor it, because this obviously is not being monitored because there's no five-star school.
Yeah, well, those weren't my priorities. Those came from 2 town managers ago. So I hear what you're saying. Someone put those down in there, whether they were lofty goals or in the clouds, I have no idea, but I didn't put those in there.
No, and I'm not saying you did. I'm not saying anybody here did. I don't know who did. I'm just saying, when I read this was in here, and for me personally, I think at least the 5-star is extremely important to make sure all the schools are rated 5 stars, and we need to hold whoever's feet to the fire.
The only thing I'd say to that is, how do you define 5-star, right? I mean, this council has worked very hard to get a school bond passed, which they have, and now they have, this school department is going to have a new school that they can designate 5-star, 10, I don't know what they're going to designate it, but you're giving them the tools they need to succeed. So that's how I take it.
But that's only one school. There's still, what, 4 or 5 other schools?
I hear you.
Who doesn't have goals?
All right.
Oh, yeah.
So perhaps this is something new council early in their term can have a whole meeting dedicated to, so they can really outline all their goals, objectives they wish to accomplish over their tenure in the 2 years of that term. It's tough to get into this now because this council only has 3 months left before the term expires and a new council comes in. I think they're good questions you raised, Greg, but really, this is something that should be dedicated once a new council comes in from the start of their tenure to really outline, X, Y, and Z as to what they want to achieve, what they want to accomplish within the 2 years in their term, and then sort of spell that out so it's in the budget document.
I just think it's good to get the ball rolling now so that the new school committee would know what the town council would expect.
Well, because the school committee at that time may be different than it is now, and because the town council at that time may be different than it is now, I just don't think it makes sense to sort of dive into that inquiry now. That's just my thoughts.
I think it's very important that we do it, or whoever the next council is does it right. At the very beginning, we sort of dove into everything. I know, it is a great list. So I guess hopefully the next council will be able to just be a little bit more clear at the beginning. But I would agree with Rory that it's really work that needs to be done up front.
All right. I don't think really any action needs to be taken on this.
Thank you for bringing this to forefront, Greg, and I think it will provide, honestly, I think this council, when it began its term, couldn't agree on the goals or how to begin the project, and I think it was a lot of misunderstanding about what the goals really are, and so we never amended or revised the ones that were created previously. I do agree with Jim. I think he's actually probably reading off an email that I gave him about some of my priorities, because what he said were, I gave him a list of 10 or 12 things, and it's really it's really, I look at the goals and objective as, what is the council going to work towards together for the next 2 years? We took over in November of '22, and what were we going to work on? Whether it was the school bond, whether it was at the time the land swap for the hospital, every one of these projects was something that we were grappling with, that we wanted to work collaboratively with Jim and the departments to get done. We just could never agree on those 12, and we went down a few rabbit holes, as I recall, in the meetings, and then we just put it aside because there was too much, quite honest, personality jockeying around. So it's important that the next council identify 10 or 12 things and help the manager and the staff do them. Because personally, I feel like we constantly reprioritize to Jim through emails and texts and phone calls about updates and where is this and work on this. And I think it would be easier for the staff if they just said, these are the 10 things the council wants us to move forward in 2 years.
I just want to say that I don't think this had to do with the council not being able to agree on their goals and objectives. I think we all had a lot of common goals and objectives, and that is evidenced by the actions we take and the votes we take throughout our tenure here. And Jim has named off a number of those which we have achieved thus far and plan to further on as we move forward. I think it really came down to getting all of those organized in a paper form, in a document that could put into the budget. And I think it just kind of became inefficient for us to get to a point where, all right, here it all is, and let's put it in there. So we decided, let's just govern by our actions. Those demonstrate what our goals and objectives are. And I think for the most part, a lot of us do agree and have agreed on certain things that we've done. So I don't think it had anything to do with us not coming to agreement on what our goals and objectives were. It just really came down to putting it in a document form. So, yeah.
I would agree. I mean, I think that we've worked together really well as a team and that we've accomplished a lot together. So I feel good about what we've done as a team. So.
All right.
I'm not saying you guys haven't done a lot and accomplished a lot, because I think you have. I'm just saying this is in here, and to me, this is really important for the students. And there should be a mechanism in there to go over these goals, whether it's 6 months, every 6 months, whether it's once a year. We could certainly set some type of mechanism in place.
Yeah.
That may not be a bad idea, to have a periodic workshop, not just with the budget, because the budget process tends to be intense, but it's a larger discussion worth having.
All right. So good discussion on this. No real action to be needed at this time. So now we'll move on. Town manager's report.
Well, there are 2 items. A, the updating the school building committee, school facilities project. I mean, we've kind of talked that one right through. I don't see anything else that we really need to address at this point. But B is a program that I think we could address. So if no one else on the council if anyone on the council has any questions on the school building committee or the school facilities project, you can ask, but I think we've really talked that one right through.
So I want to hear about the community medicine program, but so at a future meeting, could you specifically discuss where you're at with the swapping of the land at the high school site? I just want to hear where we are
at the high school site or the hospital? I thought you asked about the hospital.
I will ask about that.
All right.
I don't want to spend any time. It's already 10:20. But at a future meeting, could we just talk specifically about the process for the swapping of the spaces? I just want to make sure it all is okay, so that we all understand it, to explain to other people that the why and where it is. Not for now. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the high school, right? That's what you're talking about?
The high school.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can explain it.
Yep. I just want to have a better talking about that. And then I do have, Craig, do you have anything? I just have a couple things for a future meeting. One is, could we talk about I'm realizing that we've talked in executive session about the hospital lease, sale, whatever, and we have not talked about it with the public. And so when it came out in the newspaper last week, people were asking lots of questions, and we never had any dialogue with the community about that. So in the future, we need to have an update about that and maybe a public agenda item about it so that people can participate and give their input and ask questions, and we're not trying to play catch up to explain where things are or where they're not. So if you could do that. Second or third thing, I don't know. North Kingstown Town Beach just made, they announced that they made their beach accessible. Terry's not here, but they have like a mobile buggy and a pad so that if you need accessible access to the beach. And I just was wondering if we could explore that in South Kingstown Town Beach. I did notice it at East Matunic, but we had residents talk about accessibility, and maybe that would be, it's not going to solve the Old Mountain Field, but we should be thoughtful. I know nothing about North Kingstown's Town Beach, how big it is or whatever, but if we could explore that. And the last thing is, it's just interesting to me, I'm going to note that we don't have a water ban, and I just was curious. Every other year we've had craziness, and like I don't want a water ban, but it's just interesting that in my whole time living in town, it was a standard practice for a long time until 2 or 3 years ago, and then we didn't have one last year, and we didn't have one this year. So,
Well, the reason is we got unprecedented amount of water. I mean, my grass, I cut it every 3 days. It grows. Well, I mean, we got 6 inches of rain, 2 inches of rain, all in 1 week. I mean, it's common sense. It's obvious. You have a water ban when you need water to conserve. We have more water. We know what to do with it.
It's 6 inches deep on Route 108.
well, but in past years, it was just a right of, it's Memorial Day, it's odd even.
No, Veolia was monitoring the water usage, and it really came down, but I'll let Rich explain if he's the subject matter.
You know, the water bans, a lot of it is based on groundwater elevation, so they've been doing regular monitoring. You know, 2 years ago when we had a full-out ban, it was some of the worst groundwater levels, and river levels, everything was down. The past 2 years, you know, everything's been up because of the rain, the water we've been getting, but a lot of it's based on groundwater, you know. So, you know, a lot of the rain we had even in the spring is holding up, and it's in this fall even. You know, we got a lot of rain in the fall as well. So it's just elevated our groundwater levels to the place where much of the water in the state, you know, other than the Scituate Reservoir, much of the water in the state is wells, and it's all based on groundwater. So.
And that's a good explanation.
And this may also, they may still be talking about maybe bans, but
what we were told as a council when we were putting the water, when we were told that there was a water ban, it was because they couldn't meet the demand, so that people were running their sprinklers, people were running, you know, whatever, pools, whatever, and that was the issue. So it was that they didn't have, you know, we couldn't build more tanks because then in the winter there wasn't that much demand. There's a whole conversation about this.
yeah.
So I'm just curious, because the demand for using a sprinkler and all of those things still exists whether it rains or not. People are still sprinkling.
Well, not as much.
Well, we had a drought 2 years
Not
ago.
as much. So, yeah, they're not using their irrigation as much when it's raining. I still see irrigation going even when it's raining. And actually, we can monitor. We know what people are using at 4 a.m. We can see hour to hour what people are using. So individually by homes, because that's the way our meters work. So we know that people are still watering even when it is raining, but it's less. And so the demand isn't as high.
Okay.
Demand has a lot to do with it, but again, you know, we have to think about, you know, fire suppression, all those things. So, yeah, so demand is a big part of it. You're right. It was, a couple of years ago, it had a lot to do with demand. We had a situation a couple of years ago where we couldn't keep the tanks at the level they needed to be. Right.
Right. So do you anticipate a water ban at this point? It's July 22nd.
I have not heard one word
Great.
regarding a water ban. That doesn't mean that it may not come about. It depends on what July turns out to be and what August maybe turns out to be. But it could happen. And I don't, I'm not going to go out on a limb on it. I can't. But I don't anticipate there's going to be much of a water ban.
Thank you. So Jim, did you get it? The 88 at the beach, in the hospital, and the land swap for the high school.
I took great notes.
Thank you.
All right. You got anything?
As long as we've gone this far down the hole, I did get a question about a ramp at our beach. There was some sort of temporary structure that was there and is now gone. I was going to ask Terry about it, and I forgot.
Yeah, so we used to have a mat. I remember the mat, and I think that got damaged or washed away. There's something that happened. Someone just brought that up. As far as the buggy, I'm not sure. I don't remember one there, but these are all things. We are we're hopeful that we can get some substantial funds and a congressional delegate grant, but these are all things that we should have, and I'll research it with Terry once I see her.
All right. What do we got? The next item on here, Jim? Community paramedic program?
Yes, we have a program that Craig Stanley came up with, and it's really been in existence for several months. It's a very good program for the town, and I'll have Craig explain it.
Where would the brochures be found if you were a resident? In the library, in the senior center? Okay, but they're not physically printed in, like, a place? Susan?
Good evening. The program was something that when I first took this position, I wanted to implement because of just the impact it has on our business and the way we rethink how we respond to calls and treat people. The pilot program began last fall. I received grant funding in 21-22 building this. So to understand all of the equipment, the training, the time per hours has all been paid through grants. From the Department of Health, the Home Equity, Washington County Home Equity Zone. So from that standpoint, everything has been covered through grant funding. The pilot is we had it about a year, then we received additional funding through May of 25. So that will continue to pay for the hours for the paramedics to go out and treat the patients and equipment that we need. The way it works is we get referrals from really 3 different categories. One is from South County Hospital, one is through Thunder Mist, and then now we've recently began working with Care New England because they have a number of patients in South Kingstown. So these are patients that would either be congestive heart failure, cardiac rehab, wound care, that need follow-up treatment. Also, the patient could be entered in through 911, where we have a patient that we go on quite a bit that may benefit from us going out to see the patient. The goal of the program is to keep the patient at home, keep them well, so they're not having to call 911, and one, they're not having to go to the emergency room all the time and being admitted, particularly with the congestive heart failure patients that we may see from our Medicaid population. From the hospital standpoint, if they're readmitted within 30 days, they can't charge anymore, so they have to eat that cost. So it benefits the patient for us to keep up with this patient, visit them, make sure they're taking their meds, make sure they're being healthy, to one, keeping them, from calling us. If they need us, we'll go, but then going to the hospital. And this is really the trend within EMS around the country. From my perspective, the best call we can respond to is the one that doesn't occur. So that's kind of where we are with this. We have 4 paramedics that go out during the week. Since October, we've had over 110 visits with patients, and some of those enter in the system, and as they get better, they exit the program. And then we also work with mental health, behavioral health patients, where we may see where it's just going there, making sure they're taking their meds. And we've had countless stories of, a mother had told us we go out and we see their child, and it has kept them from calling 911. It's kept them involving the police. It's just a matter of touching base with them. Are they taking their meds? What issues are they having? And really for us to be a resource. We're not psychologists, we're not whatever, but we kind of solve problems. What do they need? Do they need a wheelchair ramp? When we go into the house, we make sure they have food in the fridge. They have their, do they have their medications? Who's going to take them to the doctor? We don't take people to the doctor, but we arrange for that. So it's really encompasses the whole aspect of it. We look in the house to make sure there's any trip hazards, any cluttering. Because what is that? That's preventing a call. That's preventing, the person from breaking their hip. They go to the hospital and they go to rehab for 6 months. So little things like this is what we try to do. And we don't replace home health nursing. That's not what this is for. This is on a temporary basis of bringing a patient into the program and then having a positive outcome for them to exit out. And right now we don't charge for that. We're for any of the care. It's fitting through the grant. Down the road, as we build this program, the model around the country is hospitals will subsidize us to take care of these patients. So we would be able to maintain this program at a constant revenue to maintain it. That was a lot of stuff. I don't know if, in a nutshell.
Is there, I know like Blue Cross has a program where they send out people that have been hospitalized multiple times over, say, 6 months or a year. They have this program that they go out, and I'm wondering if with all of these services and they're being expanded throughout the country, if there's any precedent for insurance companies to start covering something like this.
Yeah, because, at this point, no, but I think that's where the future is headed for this, because it benefits everybody.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's
really,
where we need to head, but right now, that's not there yet.
Right.
One of the big goals that we've accomplished now is we're starting to do telehealth. We have a program that was paid for the grant within our system. So we would set up an appointment, let's say this Friday with Dr. Smith, with Mrs. Jones at 2 o'clock. We would get there ahead of time, do a set of vitals, do a 12-lead EKG, and then bring the doctor on to telemedicine, say, here we are, these are her vitals, she's looking good, or no, you know what, she's building some fluid. Do you want us to give some Lasix? And he may say yes, so we administer Lasix right there in the house, and then evaluate, and then say, okay, she's good, she can stay home. Otherwise, in the past, she may let that go, and then the weekend comes, she can't breathe, she calls us, she goes to the ER, she gets admitted. So that's the full circle of this program.
This is so wonderful. You really deserve a lot of accolades for making this happen. This is really forward thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, in the next phase of this, we're working with South County Health to do draw blood. So they're training us to providing the equipment. So if a physician, one of the primary care docs, we send a referral and say, hey, I need blood drawn on this patient, we will go out there, draw the blood, bring it to South County Lab, let them do it, and then the results go to the doctor. And then when we go out, we also have access to their medical records at the hospital. So the 4 medics, when they do an evaluation, they report it from the state side because the Department of Health is paying for the grant. So they monitor what we're doing. We have permission from the Department of Health to do this. Very few departments are doing this. And then we can enter in their medical record of what we did. So the primary care physician or the hospitalist, whatever, can look in the program and say, okay, we were there. This is what their vitals were.
Really awesome.
Yeah, and then the other way was we meet with the readmission task force at the hospital. I meet with them every 2 weeks, and then they'll present a patient, and most of the time we have contact with this patient. So I'll look at how many times we've been with the patient, then they'll say, can you guys go follow up with this patient, and this is our need, or this person's need, and we will. And then it just becomes a full circle.
All right. Thank you, Chief Stanley.
Any
Great work.
other questions, or?
So I'm just curious, because it says South County Mobile Integrated Health.
Yes, so we're part of the, with Charlestown Rescue and Narragansett Fire Department, we're part of the South County, that's how we got the grant, the 3 communities. This is expanding to Westerly, Hope Valley, they're going to be becoming part of this. Now, we strictly stay in South Kingstown. Each department entity stays within their jurisdiction.
Oh, so South Kingstown EMS only handles South
Correct.
Kingstown
Yeah,
residents?
correct.
Everybody, who's the administrator of the whole?
So our medical director oversees the program, but we deal directly with whatever the hospitalist, they become our medical control if we're dealing with that patient, or the primary care physician. We deal directly with them. Because they're more familiar with the patient.
Right, this is great. I actually was talking to Jim because I didn't know if someone I knew could benefit, but I had a question about like even like picking up medications if people can't get to the pharmacy. Is that something that you think could be part of the program? in the
Yeah, we
future?
could arrange for that, to do that. We tend to look, we solve problems. You know, we find resources for them. They might need a wheelchair ramp, so we utilize a vendor to get that put in, then we try to arrange for funding for that, to try to do one-stop shopping.
Okay. So I definitely think that this needs to get more publicized. I don't know. That's why I asked, like, where are the pamphlets? And you said they're just on the website.
Yeah.
Can we put, like, some at the library, or should we
Yeah, I
put
believe
them
we
at the
have, but
senior center?
we're actually changing, we have to change the numbers because now we're getting a new fax number.
Okay.
So we're going to be reprinting those here in the next probably week and a half, and then we'll send those out.
So that's really great.
I know it can be very difficult down here to find a nursing agency that has people to come into your house in South County probably because we have no place for people to live. But it's really hard if you have somebody that you're taking care of. And so for so many reasons, this will really make a big difference for people and caregivers and everything. So really well done.
Yeah, and again, we're doing the pilot program. We'll reevaluate this by next May. So this is going to, I assume this is going to really take off to where we'll have to dedicate full-time people to this. But now we're trying to do two things. One, determine our census, how many patients. We're also taking the data with the hospital and showing actual data of these many patients we saw, and they were not readmitted to the hospital. And that's the important thing of this whole process, is having that data. And we're not just going out there, gee whiz, and saying hello. We're actually making a difference. We're doing cost savings and taking care of people.
All right. Thank you, Chief Stanley.
Thank you,
Great work
thank you.
here. All right. That's now going to move us to public comments, formerly known as comments from interested citizens. At this point, anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, I invite you to just come on up. And we'll limit you to 5 minutes. We just ask that you identify yourself.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Susan, enjoy retirement. And for all these years, thank you for your patience so many times. I appreciate the help, really. So enjoy retirement again. You know, I always bring up the news we have to consider, but obviously in the paper this morning, we heard from Brian Daniels, the state boss of the budget management, in the paper this morning, so let me just read a couple lines here. The House Fiscal Report now estimates that after the $262 million deficit next year, the budget gap will grow each year to $293 million by the start of fiscal year 2028. That sounds rather ominous. But what's of great concern here? This year's state budget passed last month is expected to be the last to take advantage of the federal pandemic aid. And in some cases, no replacement funding has been identified, creating future structural deficits. Of that almost $600 million of ESSER money that came in, almost 3/4 of that, or I understand almost 80% of it, went towards personnel. And that funding ends this September 30th. So there's going to be some real difficult budgets put together for fiscal year 26. Very difficult for a lot of towns where they spent most of that money on personnel. So it's going to be, I think it's going to somehow or another affect state aid, and somehow or another will affect us as well as all other communities. So And fingers crossed, because I just had a chance to see the revision number 4, I believe, from the school department on the school budget. I don't know if you've all enjoyed that reading, but I've got more concerns now about that $1 million budget, which I thought was going to be $1.6 million. So I'm just not sure where this is going to stand. We probably won't find out till October and November. So a lot of work that you're going to have to consider. But please, we've got to watch this deficit issue. I keep speaking about it. I just really hope it hits home. And unfortunately, here in this town, you just don't see prices on property dropping at all. You talked earlier about South Road, some of the concerns I run across. A lot of businesses need rental. Rentals are very fluid because a lot of times a community like ours, you need summer workers, workforce housing for rent for 3-4 months. That's when we're busy. And Block Island did that with a lot of their housing that they went through years ago. A lot of it was just absolutely will be for that summer market. That's when you need the people. So maybe we'll have more of an interest in the rental area besides the ownership issue between 60 and 120%. All right, so really lots of you to work on with your rest of the summer coming at you, and hopefully you all enjoy it. But please, this deficit issue, and even our own management budget office said that it's not the revenue increases, it's that spending is just absolutely run wild here. So anyway, we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Bob Traeger?
Well, seeing you know who I am, I don't have to introduce myself. I would like to say one thing to Susan, who probably doesn't realize it, but I was partaking of your caring when you realized I couldn't hear, and you came over, and I've meant many times to say something to you, but I better do it now because I might not be seeing you. Caring is a huge part of your job, what your job was. It's the main, one of the main things. Anyway, this is, why do I come? Today I had a very difficult day. I was at rehab today, but before I went to rehab, I was putting a lot of work on my porch at my house. And around 5, when I got back from rehab, I said, gee, I really don't want to go to the council tonight, so I kind of do what I have to do to get over here. And believe it or not, as long as this meeting is, and I know everybody should be in bed by now, I'm still glad I came. Because a lot transpired tonight. I thought this was going to be a short meeting when I saw the agenda. So you guys made sure it wasn't. And I didn't hear you pulling out of it either, like you're genuinely trying to solve problems that are close to impossible to solve. The housing thing has been going on for a long time, and I don't think it's an easy one, but I applaud you for doing it. And when I came early, the meeting that was going on is one of the reasons that I got involved in even coming to any meetings, and that was a lot of years ago. Because public access, I believe, is lacking. I'm not saying it so much for the town, but I think for the whole state of Rhode Island. It's been not well done. I think public access in Rhode Island, I think it's more or less decreasing public access. Now, I don't know what it is right now. I was impressed by listening to what was going on, but it all boils down to a lot of cooperation from a lot of people that live in areas where there are public access spots. And There's no end to what I'm thinking about. Think about what just happened this week in this country, in the last couple of days. I mean, I know you listen to the news. You wouldn't be in a job like you are if you didn't know what was going on. So we've got a real interesting, exciting, but dangerous period coming up. And I pray that the country will figure it out. I listen a lot. I do a lot of listening. I watch the C-SPAN quite a bit when I'm not doing something else. And I listened a little to the hearing on the president's assassination, and you wouldn't want to be in her position right now. It's just too bad, because I'm sure the Secret Service was doing the best they could, but they missed something. She knows it. But, it's just the kind of questioning that goes on, and the reason behind the questioning when one of our officials like that's working in a most difficult job, and they're put through the ringer. Everybody makes mistakes, and I make plenty of them every day myself, and that's part of our nature. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. I'm glad I came. This is a little bit too late, and I don't think you should be having to do this. I think you could have shortened it a little bit, but you're trying to solve problems. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right. It's going to bring us to the end here.
Second.
We got a motion to adjourn. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?